From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Raquel Stephen. Today we're back with another stop in our Summer Finger Lakes tour, where we explore the stories, people, and places that make this region so vibrant. This hour, we're heading to the northern tip of Seneca Lake, the deepest and in many ways the most iconic of the Finger Lakes. This is Geneva. It's a city with deep indigenous and agricultural roots, an interesting history, and a dynamic present. Known to some as the Lake Trout Capital of the world, and to others as a lakeside arts haven, a culinary gem, or a sustainability trailblazer. But all of those identities live side by side in this small city with a big personality. And whether you've driven through it on your way to a wine tasting or you've lived there your whole life, Geneva always has something new to discover. Today, we're going to explore what makes Geneva tick. Joining me in studio, Steve Valentino, the mayor of Geneva. Nice to have you, Steve.
Thank you, Raquel. Happy to be here.
Jessica VanDeMar, the marketing director at Finger Lakes Visitors Connection. Hi, Jessica.
Hello.
And Jan Regan, photographer. Oh, we're going to go down the list, Jan. Photographer, board member of Geneva's Industrial Development Agency, and president of Reuse Systems Incorporated.
Wow.
We expect you to talk a lot today, okay, Jan?
Thank you so much, and
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for showcasing Geneva.
Of course. And our listeners love this series, so I expect a lot of engagement from our listeners. And joining us remotely, we have Susie Monaghan, executive director of the iconic Smith Opera House. Hi, Susie, you're on the line.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Of course, Susie. Thank you for joining us. And we have a lot of guests here today, so this is going to be a wide-ranging conversation. And we know our listeners have been loving this series, so keep the calls and messages coming. All right? Let's jump in. First, let's set the scene with Jessica. You help people fall in love with this region every day. What is about this place that draws people in and keeps them coming back?
We do. We market the entire Finger Lakes region, Ontario County specifically. And I mean, if you just look outside when you're at the lakes, it speaks for itself. But really with Geneva, it is very central to the entire Finger Lakes region. You can get to day trips to Canandaigua, Rochester. You can go down to the southern area of the Finger Lakes. And it really is a great spot that people like to hub. We call it hub and spoke. Stay in one spot, travel outside of it. Yeah. So a lot of people like staying in Geneva and then traveling outside to Cayuga Lake, Canandaigua Lake, and other areas in the Finger Lakes.
So Jessica, what kinds of visitors are discovering Geneva today, and how has that changed in the last 5 or 10 years?
We see a lot of leisure travel, but also a lot of group travel. So when you see the giant motor coaches out on the interstates, the throughways, they're coming in from other areas of New York State, but also outside of New York State. And it's a busload of 50 people, and they're all coming in to explore the region. So we see a lot of that coming in, and really generally a lot of outdoor enthusiasts, a lot of foodies, and of course the wine region. Everyone comes for the wine and craft beverage too.
Yes, and is it Linden Avenue? Is that the
Linden
hot spot?
Street.
Linden
yes.
Street, that's the hot spot, right?
Yes, Linden Street is a amazing spot, especially there's a number of wine shops and stores on that front, and almost every single one of them has a certified sommelier that works there. So really top-notch wine on Linden Street. And then it also closes off to the driving traffic. So on the weekends, it'll close off to the driving traffic, be pedestrian only. It has a beautiful mural on it, really just lights, sets the scene for the nightlife in Geneva.
Yeah, and Geneva seems to have like this sweet spot between a small town with a little urban flair, right? What is that urban flair? What do we mean by urban flair? What is that like? Jan, if you want to...
Sure, yeah.
Sure.
Well, we do have a tagline, uniquely urban.
Yes.
And I think some of what you've indicated, even Linden Street, and it's a place with its own identity. I would add, there's we can all speak to the beauty of the place and even the architecture, et cetera. But one of the things, and this probably adds to the uniquely urban aspect of Geneva, is the people who live there, because we have Hobart William Smith colleges. That brings in a dynamic group of smart and creative people. We have Cornell Ag Tech, which also similarly, but also people who are more on a scientific bend than the liberal arts approach of Hobart William Smith. And you meet people who are developing new apples and new grapes. You have the people who are the winemakers living in our city, and followed closely by the culinary people. And on top of all that, or at the base of all that, are the people who've lived there all their lives and know the traditions and the special things about Geneva. And together, that vibrant community just makes Geneva a particularly special place.
So how do you balance it all, right? How do you take this hidden gem and balance the growing industry and the new people that are coming in? And how do we keep that identity?
Let me jump in. I think the challenge there is taking a look historically at Geneva. Back in the 50s and 60s, we had Seneca Army Depot and the Sampson Naval Air Base. So the population in Geneva and the industry in Geneva was huge back then. It was the go-to place to be. And throughout the 70s and 80s, things kind of changed as the economy changed and as those bases dwindled down and closed. So for us to create that balance, it takes a lot of effort. Yes. And Jan's also been on council. You missed that part.
Oh, she's been on council. Yeah, Jan, you are a one-woman show here. What don't you do, Jan?
And making decisions throughout the years to kind of bring back that vibrancy has been a major challenge. One thing we've focused on is keeping our lakefront open for the public to be able to come and enjoy it. So if you look at some of the other Finger Lakes, our lakefront on the north end of Seneca Lake is just gorgeous. Yeah. You can sit there and see a sunrise. You can take in all the beauty. There's walking paths and bicycle paths and so many things to do. We just had a Muscle Man triathlon there, and a huge draw. So for us, showcasing ourselves, interesting enough on the Muscle Man, that brings people from all over the world. So, word gets out, and you're seeing these people. I love going downtown on Linden Street or elsewhere and talking to people, and they're from Pittsburgh, or they're from Maryland, or they're from out of state and out of country. And it just makes me beam inside to know that people recognize the city of Geneva, which it was a hidden gem for years.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I was going to ask you to elaborate on that, because it's considered a hidden gem, but is it still hidden?
I think so. I think it hasn't reached its potential. We really are working on more marketing, because public and private investment gets you so far, but tourism is one of our biggest attractions. We know we don't want big industries anymore. We really want those nice food and beverage specialties. And as Jan mentioned, Cornell is just such a great asset to us. It has a viticultural program there, and they do a lot of food research there. We actually have an ag tech park, and we're trying to attract more businesses to come in and do their food research there, which helps the area.
And I know you grew up there, right, Steve? You're from there. You grew up there. How has Geneva changed over the years from your perspective, and what are the biggest priorities right now for the city as mayor? Yeah.
I actually ignored Geneva until I came back from the Army. When I was coming back driving up Route 14 along the lake, I'm like, wow, I live in a beautiful part of the country. Yeah. So, when you're young and you're growing up, you take things for granted. But honestly, when you've been away and you come back, you're just enamored over how beautiful the area you live in. So, for me, the 70s and 80s were a little bit of a challenge. We were moving the road on 5 and 20 away from the lake. Our downtown was having challenges, losing businesses. We were losing population. And, that's what my father hollered at me. He says, you can't complain, you got to get involved. So that's how I got on council in 96. And the focus was, how do you revive Geneva? How do you bring things back to the city of Geneva? And that still, to me, is a challenge. I think we haven't reached our potential yet. We've seen some great strides with the $10 million DRI. We've got great lakefront, great downtown. And great neighborhoods are increasing, property values are increasing. So for us, the biggest challenge is our economic development and housing right now.
Yeah. So Jessica, when you're marketing Geneva, what are your go-tos? What do you sell?
As Steve mentioned, the lakefront, and we always tell people when you're in Geneva, make a stop at the Finger Lakes Welcome Center. Of all the welcome centers in New York State, I like to brag that we have the best view of all of them, and you have the beautiful I Love New York sculpture right there with the lake behind it. What a prize to bring that picture home as a souvenir. And we promote the shops that are there. The downtown area really is a very walkable area with a lot of mom and pop shops, boutiques, bookstores. And when you talk about revitalization, the way that different buildings are repurposing what they once were. I mean, you have Twisted Rail in Geneva that moved into the old movie theater. Who wants to go to a brewery that was in an old movie theater? It's so awesome. And then you have down outside of the city, you go down a little bit, you have Brewery Ardennes, and they're in an old sheep farm. So the history that you have in the buildings that these new businesses are in is just so unique that it really tells the story very well. So it's a lot of that. And the lakefront outdoor activity, you have Seneca Lake State Park that's right there. It's got the splash pad for the kids. You also have a disc golf course. I don't really disc golf all that much, but my brother is very into it. I didn't tell him this yet, but I said, I'm going to have to grab my brother to help get some photos out at the disc golf course.
And I know you mentioned Geneva's uniqueness, right? And I want to touch on that. Geneva straddles two counties, Ontario and Seneca. Does that impact the way the city operates or how residents experience community life, Steve?
Well, I don't think it's a major impact by any means. We are very friendly to our both Seneca County. It's the shoreline is kind of the dividing line, and then up by the state park. And we work well with the Seneca County representatives. So we're actually working on some infrastructure sharing and some fire and protection sharing between the two counties. So we have a great relationship right now, and I think that's beneficial to kind of piggyback off each other and be able to draw more people into the area. So there's no resentment. No county line per se.
And I want to get into Geneva's history. Steve, Carrie's not here with us, so I'm counting on you and all of you as my historians, right? What do we know about the Indigenous presence and legacy of Geneva? And what was Geneva before it was called Geneva? And I heard that the name Geneva, no one knows where it came from. Is that true?
Well, no, I can't say that's not true because I can remember in 1998 I got invited to a Geneva of the World's Convention in Switzerland. So I went with another representative, Dr. Marshall. We went to Geneva, Switzerland, and 28 Genevas in the world. So that's where Geneva being on the base of a lake, and I will brag because besides Geneva, Switzerland, Geneva, New York is the only one that's on a lake that is representative except for Geneva, Ohio, which is on the huge Lake Erie. The rest of them are not even on bodies of water. So that's kind of where the name came from. As far as the Indigenous, I mean, there's some great histories and great landmarks all throughout the city of Geneva and the town of Geneva where you can kind of look at that information and feel confident. I wish I could remember the Iroquois tribe. Jay, I'm reaching out because my brain...
It's difficult to pronounce for one thing. Yeah, it's not going to come... It's not on the tip of my tongue, I'm afraid.
And we recently had General Lafayette come to the city of Geneva. There was a reenactment of General Lafayette. So up on the west side of our city, there's a stone there that talks about over 100 years ago how General Lafayette, actually 200 years ago, how General Lafayette came to the city of Geneva. And General Lafayette did great things, but the reenactment was so cool. People from France came over and we did the whole reenactment and the firing of the muskets and everything. It was phenomenal.
Oh my God, that sounds great. That's the stuff you see on television, right? And I would love to see that in live in person. That sounds so much fun. Geneva later became the center for agriculture and then a military hub, like you mentioned, Steve. What parts of Geneva's past do you think still echoes today that's more present?
Well, I think the building structures, the architecture is huge. For us, we try to do our best. You have Susie Monaghan, who can talk a lot about the Smith Opera House, which is a great anchor in our city of Geneva. So I think architecture is huge. Some of the history, we have a glass plant in Geneva, and it was interesting because there was a glass plant over 100 years ago there. So you see some of the resurgence of some of the businesses. One thing that we still have a gap in is we have a lot of industries that left Geneva. So our challenges there are remediating some of those sites or reusing some of those buildings. Similar to here in Rochester, when Kodak vacates a large number of buildings, you have a large challenge on what to do with those.
Yeah, and we want to ask Susie to join the conversation. We're gonna talk about the Smith Opera House. Susie, tell us about the Smith House. What makes it special, not just to those living in Geneva, but to the region? What makes it special?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating place. I feel so privileged to come here every day to work. It was started in 1894. So we just celebrated our 130th birthday last year.
Wow.
And my staff and I just recently went to a conference of the League of Historic American Theaters in Pittsburgh. And there's, hundreds of these across the country. And really, the Smith is one of the oldest and one of the most continually operating. So in terms of legacy, it just really points to the generations of Genevans who have made the Smith its priority, not only by going to shows, but certainly once it became a not-for-profit organization in the late 70s, making it tick, doing the donations, writing the grants to make sure this place survived. And it's incredible inside. It's so deceiving from out on the sidewalk. I mean, we have a beautiful facade, but there is no way you can really get a sense of it until you walk through those doors. And I'm really privileged to be in the lobby when visitors come through the door and are like, wow, this place is incredible. So, it's the artists, often musical artists, who bring people through the doors. Recently we had Los Lobos, Old Crow Medicine Show, Mandy Patinkin played earlier this year. That's when we have 1,000 or more people through the door, and we have a lot of visitors from, within 100 miles or more come to the Smith to see their favorite artist, but they don't necessarily know the Smith as a building, and that's when it's really exciting to see people engage with it the first time. So we're just over 1,300 seats. And as I said, though it's 130 years old, obviously we have updates that we need to do every year to keep it sound and to keep it in step with the 21st century artists who come through and the audience and what their expectations are.
And for my guests in studio, the Smith Opera House, what is your feelings towards it? What are your reactions when walking in?
I've been quite involved with the Smith over time, and as an audience member, I photograph all their events and things like that. Yeah. But I was also on the board, and one of my proudest achievements is helping to hire Susie, who has done a wonderful job for us. And another thing about, I think, where you see that reaction that's so amazing, and it tells a little bit about the Smith being involved with the community, is through the children's programming, Art Smart, and they bring in kids, even if they live in Geneva, they may not have been to the Smith, and just the wonder on a child's face. Yes. We adults kind of don't always show our emotions quite as much as that, but it's really wonderful to be there and see kids coming in for the first time. And I to this day, I think there's been a change in theaters. A lot of people want standing locations, for or to watch their concerts, and it is really a sit and listen kind of place. But it's so beautiful, and you can look around. Above, there's in the theater itself it's supposed to bring about the feeling of nighttime sky. So there's stars up above, and when things are really on, you can even do like a sunset there and have the stars come up. And it's a beautiful place to sit and really listen and hear the music that's in front of you. And we're just glad that it has been thriving for as long as it has.
Yeah, and 130 years. Susie, what are some moments in its history that stand out to you?
Well, we're very proud to have had Bruce Springsteen play here 3 different times in the 70s, which is incredible to imagine him being here. There was a period, it was a movie theater for a very long time, and then, as I said, got saved in the late 70s. And this is a very common story across the country that, these theaters have, they're behemoths, they're so huge to try to take care of. And so they sort of lapsed in their community's minds, and then people, brought them back. I just feel like there's such a wide variety. We just had Geneva Light Opera here last weekend doing fall staff. They're here every year. And, those performers and the musicians and the singers are unmiked. And this building is so incredible for hearing people, 1,300 seats. There are no microphones. And those folks are heard perfectly beautifully throughout the building, clear as a bell. So there's just something about the acoustics of the building that are worth experiencing. But then, of course, when we have your favorite rock show in here, they're all mic'd to the hilt, and you definitely hear them too. Yeah, and, I like kind of piggybacking on what Jan said. I love that we have the dance studios from throughout the region come and do their recitals here. And, with some of the rehearsals, it's just getting those 3, 4, 5-year-olds up on stage. They don't rehearse their dance. They just rehearse their awestruckness of having been on this giant stage, looking at those 1,300 seats, and then they bring them back out again. But, these are the kids who are going to inherit Geneva community and are going to inherit running the Smith, and they need to fall in love with it, and we need to keep giving reasons for them to walk through the door and having those transforming experiences.
Thank you, Susie. And I know, Jessica, when you're doing your marketing, where does the Smith House line up as far as the must-sees of the Finger Lakes?
The Smith is one of the top attractions that we do mention for people to see when they come through Geneva, especially those groups that I mentioned that come through, because you get a vast array of experiences that you can get if you want to do history tours. Susie's great at helping out with groups and doing history tours, or the array of performing arts, as it was mentioned, the dancing, the music, the movies. You really get a whole family atmosphere, something for everybody there. And with it being such a historic location and long-standing, it just adds to that vibrancy of downtown Geneva.
And we talk a lot about the arts, right? How important is the arts in Geneva's identity?
Well, I think it's huge. It's one of the big draws. You can talk about wine and culinary all you want, but when it comes to arts and architecture, Geneva has a lot for people to enjoy. We've actually had a historical walk before, which has been very beneficial. The thing for me with the Smith is I can remember 7 and 8-year-olds. I was there in the late 60s. Going on Saturday matinees and watching Bela Lugosi and Dracula and Frankenstein. And as Jan mentioned, the stars, when the lights went out, those oohs and ahs, and you can look up, and it felt like you were outside. It was amazing. I did go to Bruce Springsteen once. Did go to Jay Giles. So great venues. And we've even had very famous person, Travie McCoy and the Gym Class Heroes, grow up in the Smith Opera House. And they just got inducted into the Rochester Music Hall of Fame, which is phenomenal. And it was great because they did the throwback to Geneva and the thank you to the Geneva area for that.
Yeah, and you grew up in the Smith House as well, right,
Yep.
Mayor Steve?
Definitely.
So how has it changed? Do you still get that same awe feeling when you walk in as you did when you were 7, 8 years old? I
can't compliment the volunteers and the staff that have really kept the Smith up to date and even better than it has been ever before. For me, I can remember the old films that would run, and I don't know the mechanics behind it, but there was like a flame. Well, you'd be watching the movie, and all of a sudden the film would break. And that doesn't happen anymore because I guess it got too hot in one spot or something like that. But the technology advancement in the Smith is phenomenal. And down in the basement, the meeting areas, and there's a little wine area in the basement. It's just amazing from top to bottom.
And we can't talk about the arts without having Jan speak on her skill set, photography. You've captured Geneva through your lens for years. When you think about what makes this place visually distinct, what comes to mind?
You can't resist. I consider myself really a people photographer first. But I like the spaces people are in, and you can't help but be drawn to the beauty that's around Geneva, yes. That is Geneva. We spend many weekends at the lake, and we're always there as the sun goes down, and that everyone's up there with their cell phones, and I usually have a bigger camera with me that I can capture some of that. There's boats on the lake that are beautiful. I'm not a boater myself, but I can appreciate them, and it's just a really wonderful place to be, and it's small enough you can get around, But I also, in terms of the arts, I just have to mention a couple other little things that are they're growing, and Steve mentioned the music. We've had a lot of really wonderful artists, musicians who grew up in Geneva. One thing that's come back is the Geneva Music Festival. That's classical music almost primarily, but they started introducing jazz and a few bluegrass kinds of performances as well. That's about 3 weeks every year in May to June. And it's been built up by a young man who took violin in Geneva, and then from that, just one quick leap is the St. Peter's Arts Academy, which is still instructing children. That's what that violin program was morphed into eventually in the city of Geneva. The Dove Block, historically, in terms of and architecturally, something to look at. They offer all kinds of arts programming there, and it's new enough that it's not like maybe listed like the Smith Opera House might be as a stop by, but they always have a show. They have free workshops for people, and just to walk by and see that building that again was saved by some of the citizens in Geneva. Yeah. That's how that all started, and to just you feel the community aspect, which is such an important component of Geneva.
And I have some YouTube comments for my guest here today. One person says, is the drop in Canadian tourism affecting the number of tourists coming to Geneva?
It's been hard to say exactly because everything's changing so frequently. So we don't have exact data on it to showcase for sure, but we have seen, some feedback from the Canadian visitation of people that just don't feel welcomed and ready. But our goal is to put out a warm, welcoming message to our neighbors. We did participate, our office, along with others throughout New York State, in a Canada Day posting on social media to just put out the message of when you feel welcome to come. Geneva, Ontario County, the Finger Lakes, New York State, we welcome you. So it will be interesting to see as the year continues and we get more concrete data to see. But we're so close to the border, and the Finger Lakes in general is such an economically friendly destination because you do have so much you can do for free on a budget, or you can upscale if you want a more luxury experience. It really ranges. So time will tell, but
we'll see. We'll check back in by the end of the year and see if anything changes.
Raquel, just a quick comment there, because
sure.
I'm a license plate watcher.
You're a license plate watcher.
Yeah, I want to know where people are from, so it's important.
Jan, are you a license plate watcher? Should we add that to your title?
I think it's
new
interesting.
hobby.
Yep. But just a note, from just outside of Quebec was the winner of the Muscle Man. So we're not scaring people away.
Right.
I think we're close enough to the border. Maybe if you go further than our area, you might have more of an impact with Canadian tourist visitors. But I think right now, especially with the exchange rates and everything, we're doing pretty good.
Pretty well. Okay, good. That's good to know. I hope our YouTube our commenters listen to that. Also, for Susie, we had one comment that says, so why is it called the Opera House? I haven't heard anything about operas.
Last weekend.
Yeah, well, that was the original name. So, again, it was opened up during probably the vaudeville era would best describe it, in 1894. But the first performance was, a performance of a solo Shakespeare orator. So back in the day, I think every municipality had their pretensions and, thought that Opera House sounded pretty good. So, they are all over the country, Lebanon Opera House, on and on, all over. And then when the time came to turn the place, and Jan would know more about this, into the not-for-profit, the decision was to make it the Smith Center for the Arts. But we are referred to both. And in my mind, Smith Center for the Arts is the organization. Smith Opera House is the building. Though I would say, Geneva Light Opera performs here every single year. We are welcome to more open and to more opera. Whoever wants to come in and do it, it's an exquisite place to present it, as I mentioned earlier. But yeah, good observation. Not a whole lot of opera at the Opera House.
I know, Janet, if you want to piggyback off of
Well,
what Susie said.
there was a period where the Smith Opera House was going under that name as the main name that we were carrying, and the idea there was to try and get the word out. I think every community has this problem about all that is happening in Geneva, all the arts programming, and so we were trying to be the place where you'd have that beautiful website that people look for, where all the events are listed, and where we could help program for other organizations. That had some impact, but in the end, we have some wonderful individual arts organizations, and everyone kind of carried on their own, and little by little, we've gone back to calling the Smith Opera House primarily even just the Smith, which is kind of nice too.
Okay, we'll take a quick little break. We have more questions for our guests. We're talking about Geneva as we tour the Finger Lakes right here on WXXI.
Public radio brings you the kind of enlightened discussions that keep you informed. We rely on listeners like you to help pay for this kind of programming. And when you become a sustaining member of WXXI, your monthly gift helps keep this vital service strong for the whole community. Please make your gift at WXXI.org.
And welcome back to WXXI Connections. We are touring the Finger Lakes, and our stop right now is Geneva. And joining me in studio, I have Steve Valentino, the mayor of Geneva. I have Jessica VanDeMar, the marketing director at Finger Lakes Visitors Connection. I have Jan Regan, photographer, board member of Geneva's Industrial Development Agency, and the president of Reuse Systems. And on the line remotely, I have Susie Monaghan, executive director of the iconic Smith Opera House, aka Smith House, aka Smith Arts Center. She's on the phone with us. Now, we want to talk about the good stuff. Food and wine. Well, my good stuff. Jessica or Steve, Geneva's farm-to-table scene is thriving right now. What role do local farmers and producers play in shaping Geneva's identity? Ooh.
I can talk too much, so I'll let you go, Jessica.
Okay. I'll go first and you can piggyback. Well, really, our Ontario County as a whole is very agricultural based, and it's so interesting working with the different businesses to see the connections that get made from all the way from farm to table. We work closely with Cornell Cooperative Extension. So it was mentioned earlier about Cornell's Agritech that's in Geneva there, where people can start testing to make their new food creations, testing how they can better service crops on the farms. And you see a lot of it with the local hops that people are using for the craft beverages. You see it from the local organic farms that are getting into the restaurants. A lot of the restaurants like to we really like to promote those that are farm to table, because you get a lot of people that's what they're looking for when they're considering also wellness and just supporting. The amount of farm markets that are around the area too. Geneva does a great job, summer, winter markets, and it all goes even to vendors that are doing maple syrup. So you might not see it necessarily, but you have someone that has their maple syrup farm, and then they show up at the market and they're going to sell their syrup bottles there, but their syrup products are also being used at the local restaurant that's using it for their recipes, whether it be your standard pancakes with maple syrup, or maybe they're putting maple syrup into one of their maple desserts that they're doing. And so you really see the whole lifespan and different ways that everybody interacts, and even the local brewers that have their beverages in other local restaurants. So it's all so interconnected. And just seeing agritourism as a whole, between the places that are operating as farms where you can come and you can see an operating farm, I don't know if it's made its way out to Geneva, but every other year is Fun on the Farm, and that rotates around Ontario County, different farms. And it's really a great educational experience for people to learn, again, start to finish operations of the farm, from what you have to do to just feed the animals and then where it goes from there, and then just crops in general. I got to go to Cornell Agritech recently and heard about some new technology that they're doing to work on being able to zap weeds in different ways. And I'm like, this is incredible.
Wow. And what does this do for the economy, Steve?
Well, I think
Everything
it's
goes
one of
back
the
in.
anchors.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the anchors of the economy. And I think society is changing as a whole. You know, our fast food chains are very minimal and on the outskirts of the city of Geneva, but you get into the heart of Geneva, and most of it is food to table. Or farm to table, excuse me. And I think, you know, the levers, there's been some businesses that have been around for quite some time, whether it's wine or food. You got the VanDeMar, you got Honora, you got the Linden Social. Down on our lakefront, you mentioned Twisted Rail before. They advertise, and it's so fresh. I think that's the biggest difference is when your taste buds are really tasting something that's had preservatives in it, as opposed to something that came right from the farm, through the process to the table. FLX table is phenomenal. It's tough to get a table there, so if you want to come to town, you got to think way ahead with that one specifically. In our lakefront, we had the Ramada on our lakefront, but it switched names to 43 Lakefront, and they have FT2,
yeah.
I believe is, it's farm to table. So the whole dynamics of what the farm to table has brought to the city of Geneva is huge.
Yeah.
And it's a big draw. As you mentioned, you'll see busloads of people come. You'll see weddings come to the city of Geneva. You'll see a lot of different events when girls are going to get married. They have their whole bridal party come to Geneva. That makes life interesting in the city of Geneva, definitely. Gets a little out of hand sometimes, but we actually enjoy
the excitement,
it. Yep. So it's definitely been a great economic benefit to us.
And I know I told you our callers love this series. I have on line one, I have Pat from Geneva. One second. Yes, she moved. He moved to Geneva a year ago, and moved to Geneva a few years ago, and he would like to make a comment on his experience there. Pat, are you on the line?
I am.
Hi, Pat. How are you?
I'm great. I moved here right at the beginning of COVID, so I spent 2 years remodeling the house. But since I've been out and about, I realized best decision I ever made. I retired to Geneva. And I was familiar with the Finger Lakes, but I didn't really know Geneva, and just what a great experience it's been. I did want to chime in. The name of the Iroquois Confederacy is the Haudenosaunee. That's the name we weren't coming up with.
Thank you, Pat. Pat is a historian as well right here. Thank you, Pat. And you did get a thumbs up from Mayor Valentino here when you mentioned how great Geneva has been for you.
Great town. So we hear so much about our wineries, but one of the things, I'm more of a beer drinker, and there are just so many brew pubs around here, and I frequent them. You mentioned hop growers, and I was at the Big Alice, which is just south of Geneva on Route 14, 2 nights ago, and the hop growers were actually having a meeting there. There were like 6 of them, just talking about growing hops. And I'll end with this. You mentioned maple syrup at the Big Alice. They actually have a maple beer, which is very good. It's not as sweet as you might expect.
Yeah.
Good beer.
Pat, I want to ask you this. You said you moved right around the pandemic. Did something about the pandemic influence you to move to Geneva? And what about Geneva was your decision?
No, it was coincidental.
Okay.
So I have a greyhound, and I came up for the Greyhounds event that's held farther down the lake on the east side of the lake. And I drove through Geneva. I'd been through Geneva, but I'd never been in Geneva. I drove into Geneva. I was getting ready to retire. And I turned to my dog and I said, "This is the place."
That's good to hear.
That's great to hear. Thank you,
agreed.
Pat. Thank you, Pat.
Yeah.
We appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Yeah.
He drove into Geneva and said, "This is the place." Is that what we're getting from a lot of people that stay?
I've heard that more than once.
Yeah.
You know, and people that come and invest in the city of Geneva, whether it's in a house, whether it's an old building, and we have a person on city council that came from New York City that actually invested in 2 buildings in the downtown Geneva. Pat reminded me of something. I think there's one of our gems. It's Lake Drum Brewery, which does their own beer, and it's a graduate of Hobart William Smith College, and that person has done such a great job. We had a program called Race for Space, and he took advantage of the Race for Space program, which gives you a reduced rent in a building, and he's done nothing but make fantastic strides. It's probably been 15 years, 10, 15 years, Jan?
Yeah, and just to connect the whole farm to table and farmer oriented activity in Geneva, I was there just last night actually at Lake Drum. They have a pickup. One of the local farmers comes and does their farm share pickup from there, from the bar, and it's just such a lively feel. It's an outdoor pickup, and they have outdoor seating. They're the first. It's the first time I heard the word parklet, believe it or not, was in Geneva, and they built one, and long before the pandemic. So it's little businesses like that really thrive. And just to get to Pat a little bit too. I meet, and I'm sure we all do, lots of people who come to Geneva, and I call them Genevans by choice. And I always think someday I'll get the Finger Lakes Times to back me on doing a profile of all the people who have chosen Geneva by choice.
Yes.
Because people who could go anywhere and come there, not because they have a job or their kids live there, but because they picked it out. It's, the Opera House, small college town, the lake, all those things come together, and people choose to live there and thrive and grow in the community.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Geneva by choice. I have Gloria on line too, and she wants to make a comment about the indigenous history of Geneva. Gloria, help us out here.
Hi. Okay, I'm going to spell Haudenosaunee for you.
Uh-oh.
Haudenosaunee.
Yes.
I believe that's the spelling.
Yes,
that's right.
Okay, and there's the wonderful thing about this whole group. There were 6 nations that pulled together, and there's a wonderful book that I read called Indian Roots of American Democracy. We should all be aware of this. I mean, they gave our founding fathers so much incredible, good information about the democratic process. So,
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you so much for your comment. And I definitely agree. Indigenous people definitely need more recognition. As far as environmental leadership, 100% renewable energy in Geneva, conservation areas, and more. Can you talk about some of those things and how they became a priority for the city?
Yeah, we actually became a silver certified city, and Jan's doing some great efforts. Listen, you didn't give her enough kudos because she wears so many hats. She deals with a recovery park, talking about actually trying to recover processes, whether it's waste or whether it's building materials and things like that. That's one of our focuses. But, and Ken Cameron, one of the previous councilmen, was strong advocate for, we have 2 giant landfills, one on each side of us. And it's a major challenge because it's an economic boost for certain communities, but not for the city of Geneva. We get the bad part of it, unfortunately, and people like to think that it's easy, that your waste goes out to this giant mountain and you don't have to worry about it. Well, you do have to worry about it. It impacts our lakes, it impacts our communities. So we've taken initiatives to make sure that we are making strides to do everything we can, whether it's solar power, wind power, whatever it might be. We are dead set against landfills. The majority of us are dead set against landfills. We're dead set against the storage of gas down in Watkins Glen. We're dead set against, and we might be too vocal sometimes. It might not be happening in the city of Geneva, but it's happening around us. We're going to say something about it. There was a giant project where they want to do ethanol plants on the other side of the lake, and we did everything we can to stop that. So, it's not just what are you doing about renewable energy or trying to reach zero as far as the carbon footprint. It's what are you doing to stop the contamination that might be happening around you.
And can we talk about is it the Kashong? Is it is it how do you pronounce it? Kashan
Kashan.
Conservation Area is interesting. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I don't know a lot about the Kashan
Okay.
Conservation. I'm not sure if anybody else on the line does. I'm familiar with Kashan and Kashan Glen, and there's some beautiful waterfalls in that area. So that might be the focus of it. I can tell you as a young person growing up, we used to love going out there and jumping off the falls into the water.
There is an area there. It's like mostly trails. You can cross-country ski there. It's open to the public, hike and so forth. It's quite beautiful. It's right near all the places that Steve just mentioned.
Yeah, and I know, Steve, you mentioned a little bit about some of the challenges of building this sustainable city in a rural region. Can you elaborate on that?
Geez, the one that comes quick to mind, I mean, everybody wants to take the easy path. And the easy path is usually less expensive. It's like when you eat. If you eat healthy, it costs you more. If you eat bad, it costs you less, right? The same with renewable energy, the same with sustainability. Recently, we did a change of LED lights in the city of Geneva, the street lights. And we thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. Well, we're running into some challenges with some of not only the technology, but the hardware that goes with that. So, one thing that I can point to is we have a solar village in Geneva. And we highly supported it. It's right down by our lakefront. It's just on the other side of the 5 and 20. There's probably a dozen different facilities there. They started at like 180 to 220,000. They have resold up in the high 2s and 3s now, and they are basically off the grid. And they're a stone's throw away from the lake. So very new, modern solar village. Some people think that the looks of it is a little bit different, but I can tell you the younger generation loves that stuff.
Yeah, and when we talk about rural areas, we can't help but mention healthcare, right? And having access to healthcare in that region. And I know some health systems have been pushing for that or making that a priority to prioritize healthcare in rural areas. In Geneva, we have a comment here. What healthcare facilities are there in Geneva, especially for senior citizens?
Yeah, Geneva is kind of in a renaissance or definitely changing in the healthcare area, in that several Rochester institutions are strong, and Rochester General have incorporated with Geneva's health system. But we have a hospital which is wonderful right in the community. There are several senior living units there. One thing we're always looking for more of is aging in place types of residences. And, who knows, down the road, maybe some of that will come up.
That's, to me, is a great place to age in place.
Yeah, U of R has made major investments
Yeah.
in the city of Geneva, just outside the city and the town. We used to be called Geneva General Hospital, or still is Geneva General Hospital, but it's taken over by U of R. There's a senior living area there. There's also rehabilitation for cardio rehab and other rehabs there for seniors in our community. And we keep doing more. There's a new project going on in High Street that's going to be a higher-end senior retirement location. We work with the Housing Authority, and they do senior living down in our St. Francis area. So we know that's a major focus. Ontario County just did a major study on housing, and we know that there's a gap for seniors. And interestingly enough, it said that we have a lot of 20 to 30-year-olds living in the city of Geneva, which kind of shocked me because, we have aging structures and aging people in the city of Geneva, but we have a strong growth because of our downtown for that younger group.
And just to piggyback off of that, how are we engaging these young people or newcomers in shaping what's next for Geneva?
You can reach out as much as you want to try to get people to be involved, and it is difficult because it takes time and energy. But we are doing everything we can to make sure that we reach out. We have an election season coming up this year, and a lot of the times our council doesn't mimic or look like the community itself. So trying to get people involved. We have Councilor Ahmad Whitfield, who's on council right now, is doing a great job. He's running again this year. He is representing what I would consider more the younger group. It's not in that 20 and 30 range, but trying to get people involved in boards and commissions and different activities is important for us. Also having facilities for them to work.
There's a lot that goes on through the children, too, of that group. There's a group now that's looking to start a toy library, for example. I think when there's a good idea or a need, people step up. And a lot of times it's that generation.
Yeah. So Jan and Jessica, what are some of the things you wish more people knew or understood about Geneva?
I spoke with someone yesterday who just moved here, and And she said, Geneva's got spunk. And I mean, that's something you can't really, spell out. But I think the size of the community makes so much accessible, and there's so much there to access. Yeah. And that's really, don't be fooled by the fact that we're not a huge population. A lot happens there. And, come and experience it.
Yeah. Jessica, what would you say?
No, it definitely has spunk. And I always enjoy what I enjoy about all the Finger Lakes towns is each lake you go to, each town, city you go to, each one has a different, unique feel to it. So you're not going to get the same thing from one town to the next. And with Geneva, really all of the stores that you can walk into and being by the lakefront, and really we keep talking about the people, and the people just make it so special. You walk in, and for the Finger Lakes in general, and you see it in Geneva, everyone that visits say the people here are so nice.
Yes.
And it's such a warming feeling as a resident, as a visitor. We really, in tourism, you hear a lot, live, work, play.
Yeah.
And that's the goal, is to interconnect all of those, make it a place that you want to live, you want to work, and you want to play.
Geneva, the town where you can live, work, and play. Thank you to our guest, Steve Valentino, the mayor.
Thank you. Come visit us.
I will. Jessica, thank you.
you.
VanDeMar, Jan, thank you for joining us. And on the phone, Susie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And next Thursday, we continue our tour. It's WXXI.
Thank you so much.